Today is March the 10th, 2023, and we are here today with Irene Hughes, who's running for the Amarillo AC Board of Regents. Irene, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Dan.
Let's tell the voters why you're running for the AC Board of Regents.
Okay. I worked for Amarillo College for 12 years, and I love the college, and I just felt like it was time to step in and take a new position, and this is what I chose to represent Amarillo College because I know it from the inside out, or I know part of it from the inside out, and I just really wanted to have a voice. Never have been in politics before, but I felt like this was my time to step in and try to help make Amarillo College even better.
What's the role of the Board of Regents?
The role is to hire and fire the president of the college. It's to set policy, and it's also to take care of tax abatements and deal with the taxes. Those are the main three responsibilities.
So when you said you worked for the Amarillo College, what did you do for the college?
I worked as an advisor for the Student Sports Services program at the Moore County campus. So I worked under a government grant, and I worked there for 12 years, working we had 100 students that we were to take care of, and we were to prepare them to go to four-year colleges, to go to higher education. And it was a great time that I had a great group. There were a team of 4 that worked on that grant, and we had a great time together.
So your main emphasis was on helping the students and guiding them to get them on the right career path?
Yes, we did that. We were working with first generation and low income students, and also disability. Those that had disabilities was the primary target of this grant. It's a federal grant, and we advised them, but we also took them to four-year universities. So actually drove them to Texas Tech and to West Texas, and I went over into New Mexico and took them to eastern New Mexico, and also up into Oklahoma and OPSU. So we took the students there to look around for campus tours, and then if they chose that particular university, then we took them there to get them registered so that they would not have any barriers on getting there. So it was a great time. We took students all over the area, and of course into 2 different states. So it was a great time.
That helped you get familiar then with how the other different schools and universities operated.
Yes, we worked with the advisors from all of those colleges, and I think I was at WT enough times I said I could probably do the campus tour myself because I've been there so many times, but we always enjoyed, and they were always helpful. They were always worked together with us very well. All of those colleges or universities, they all worked with us very well, and they appreciated us bringing them students too.
So I guess what made you want to run for the AC Board of Regents? Is there anything that you saw that you thought you could take your skills and apply them?
Well, I think there's a lot of small things that I probably noticed that other people wouldn't notice, and I think I have some solutions just to small things. Even while I've been just campaigning and going on the website and all of that, I think I have some small ideas. But also the main thing that I'm most concerned about is the emphasis on the DEI, and that concerns me because I think even our country is, I understand that the woke culture is probably the number one domestic threat. And according to Jim Banks, he was Indiana congressman. Mm-hmm. He says that that's one of the the real threats to America. And I've always been a pro-American, and I just feel like somebody had to step up and make a stand against, I call it an evil regime that's trying to tear down our country. And if you don't take care of things at the local level, then I think the country it's not going to work for the whole country. But I think I wanted to start at the local level and see if I could help Amarillo College. And it really wasn't a plan of mine that I had to be a politician. But I did figure out that I had some traits as a politician, and hopefully they're good traits, but I've always been very friendly to everybody, whether I knew them or not. And I just got to thinking about that the other day, that people probably think I'm really friendly now because I'm politicking and trying to get them to vote for me. But it's just my personality, and I've always been somebody that was really friendly and always wanted to know people and wanted to help people. So I've spent my whole life really all over the world. I've been trying to take care of people that were mostly underprivileged or that needed some help, and I've dedicated my life to that. So I'm here in a new position, and I believe that God has called me to it, and that's the real reason I'm here, is that I believe He's called me to come into this place for a time such as this.
So explain to us what DEI is.
Okay, DEI is, the words are diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is most what I've learned online, and I've looked in lots of different places, but most of these cultures, you could call them, or all the acronyms that you see out there, I think most, everything from BLM to CRT to WOKE to DEI, most of them have a base of Marxism. And most Americans, I don't think, really understand. I've learned a lot about it just listening to the news and different historians. I've listened to a lot of that since I've become really concerned about America and the direction it was going. But it's not going in a good direction, is what I would say. And I just don't think that people that are hooked up with it really understand where they're going. And I do know that the data on college students is alarming, that 75%, this is recent data, that 75% of college students say they want to live in a socialist country. And that is scary.
So they're winning. They're accomplishing the goal.
Yes, I think that the propaganda it's out there. And unfortunately, I believe it's really everywhere. I understand it's in the high schools. The college students have been a major target for this ideology, and I can see why, because a lot of the students that I worked with were very accepting of whatever people told them. A lot of them hadn't really done any critical thinking about, well, is this a good idea or is that not a good idea? But people just tell them things and they would just believe them. And I just feel like I've heard lots of stories about kids that have been in classes and they feel like it's been pushed on them. And it's part of the strategic plan. The 2025 strategic plan has at part 4 of the plan that's online. It's all about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And so the plan is that in the next 3 to 4 years that everybody will be trained. They talk about even the regents, the staff, and the students understand from some stories that they're being taught in their classes this very same thing. So that's very concerning to me.
So this strategic plan, is that something that you're talking about of Amarillo College, or is
Yes,
that
sir.
another entity?
Yes, it's the strategic plan of Amarillo College. Every 5 years, they revamp it, and I
So
did
their
go
goal,
back.
the goal of Amarillo College is to get us all trained into diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes, sir. That's
What if we don't conform?
well. It's kind of sad the way it's working out is that those that don't want to accept it are mostly leaving, and there's some really good people that are leaving. And then I even understood from a recent story that one of the students, that she was just sick of it in her class, and she said she never wanted to go back to college because of what she had to be taught about all the pronouns and all the all the other alternate lifestyles and all of that. And she just said she was sick of it. I understand too that the military, they are just calling, just saying, please, we have had it with this diversity. I think they just said diversity and inclusion. They kind of left out the equity, but they said, we're sick of being trained in this. We want to know how to win a war. If we're called to fight a war, we want to know how to fight. We don't want to hear all this other stuff that's been forced down our throats. So it's
so.
in all of it's everywhere.
Yeah. Well, to me, the D would stand for not diversity, but deviancy.
Well, I just got an email yesterday, and it was talking about that some of the universities in Texas are really working hard to get it out of their universities. And this person that wrote this, and I don't have his name, but I do have a copy of it, so I can show it to you. But he said it was division, exclusion, and indoctrination were the letters that he used. And I thought that was so accurate.
Yep, that's exactly.
So I was trying to remember those today so I could share them, because that's really what it is. And I visited with she was a staff member at Emerald College the other day, and she was just so defending, that whole concept. And I just felt like, she was angry that I would even consider the fact of, coming against it. And I was so sad that she really doesn't understand, because I think those that have bought in have just been lied to, and they don't know. I know there's people that know what they're doing. I know that some of the leaders, I know there's a plan, and it's been in order for many years.
60 years.
Because I actually sent 2 children to college back in the 90s. And unfortunately, they had been trained to be godly children. We had taken them to church all their lives. We had read the Bible with them. We had done all what we thought were the right things to tell them about the Lord. And when they graduated, they had no use for God. So that's when I figured out, I didn't know it when it was going on. I didn't understand it until they both graduated from, one from Texas Tech University and one from University of North Texas. I didn't know it was going on, but we're still dealing with that same problem. And that's one of the reasons that I really want to defend parents and help them at least know there's a problem out there that needs to be taken care of. But we're still praying for one of our children to come back and realize that God is necessary in this world. But they got a strong dose in the 90s. So I just want to save the children.
Well, I think it says, raise a child up in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
That is in the Bible,
So
and
they're
I
not
just
old
want to
yet.
know how old it is. How old is old?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a subjective term. So,
We do. We have great relationship with our children. We just have two, a son and a daughter, and they're doing well. They're good parents and they're good citizens and all of that. We just have just a little problem with we believe that God's necessary and our son doesn't necessarily think so. So
well, he'll figure it out one day.
I believe he will. We haven't quit praying. We pray every day, and believe I'm not quitting. So it will come to pass.
Well, I think it starts even in elementary school now, and you know, there used to be people grew up on farms and they had responsibility, and you worked, and you understood how the things really were.
Mm-hmm.
Now kids don't have that. They're on screens and they're living in a virtual world that we don't understand,
Right.
and they're easily manipulated
Yes.
mentally,
Yes. Yes.
and they don't know it.
That's true.
So they don't have. I think somebody says, "Oh, well, Rogers, you're just well grounded." I didn't really understood what they meant,
Mm.
but
But
now
that's
I
a
think
compliment, isn't it?
well, I didn't know that it was, but I think it is now. I understood what he was saying because you just understand right from wrong and what works and what doesn't work and why.
Mm-hmm.
The key is to know why. And they don't have any. They can't figure anything out.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any deductive reasoning capacity. You know, when you grow up on a farm out in the middle of nowhere, you have to get the job done. You may have limited tools, and if it breaks, you have to fix it. There
Right.
is no option,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's right.
You're
Well,
told to get it done, and you figure out how to get it done.
I actually, in high school, I grew up in Stratford, Texas, which is small town USA. Wonderful place to grow up. But in high school, there weren't a lot of jobs that were available, but my family were very adamant that you go out and get a job. At 14, it was time to go.
Yeah.
And so I signed up for a tractor driving job. And so the four summers of my high school, I drove a tractor with, there were 7 high school girls that this man hired. And at 6:30 every morning, he would stop by in a little yellow school bus and pick us up. And he would take us out in the country 17 miles. And they had 8 sections of land out there. Actually, it was Willie Price, which I think a lot of people probably know the name here in town. But we never did see Willie, but he had people that were working for him. And they would drop us off. There were 7 tractors, and they would drop us off at a tractor. At noon, the little man that sat out in the middle to help us, because we didn't have to fix anything, but he would stop us, or he'd say, time to stop, and he would bring us a drink, and we would eat our little lunch that we brought. And when we got through with that, we were back on the tractor until dark. And then about 8 o'clock, they would drop us back off at home. And that's how I grew up, and that's how I made money for clothes and stuff in high school. Mm-hmm. So I know a lot. I don't know. You know, I didn't learn to fix tractors, but I did learn to work hard. And that was something my parents thought was very important. And I see that as, I actually did that with my children too. And they are very good workers. They work hard and they do a good job. And so I think that part is a really good thing that needs to come back.
Well, I think it's good for you psychologically because you can do the work and then you can see the results of what you did that day. You know, some things that people do, I feel like I am what I do now, I can't see the results of. It's not tangible. It's better to be able to see it. So if you paint a house, that gives you
There's an end at least in there.
You can see it and it looks great and you're proud of it, right? And it improves the neighborhood and all that kind of good stuff. But I think people need some of that psychologically. And I think when they don't get it and they're doing everything on a screen, number one, they're not learning responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I think that's our biggest problem. because you can't have liberty without responsible citizens. And by that, that means they have to participate and they have to vote and they have to be involved. And when people quit being involved, then because of their lack of responsibility, then you have all this stuff seep in. And then they're not grounded in reality. They don't know the difference. They're easy to manipulate.
Yes. And I was reading an article. It was by a former KGB man that had defected to the U.S. And in the article, he talks about the 4 steps to socialism. And it has just been really quite enlightening. And he said that the first step was demoralization. And they actually, the ones that are involved in tearing down this country are, they come in and they actually target these young people because they know how vulnerable they are, and start teaching them that the country's bad, the country, that America's not a good place, and they start tearing down America. And when they believe that, then they move into the next realm is that they start tearing down, they get rid of the military. You can see what's going on in our country when I say this. Tear down the military, foreign relations, you mess that all up, and there's no defense. So that's the second step. And then the third step is they make a crisis, which we've been through a crisis recently. And I think it didn't work as good as they planned it to, because from the crisis, they start taking control.
Well, it breeds dependency.
Yes. And they also, part in there, the second stage, they also start trying to give stuff away, like welfare and all of that. They start making the people dependent on the government and say, hey, we've got all these freebies, come on down and we'll take care of you. And then the crisis comes and fear is a big thing in the crisis. If everybody gets afraid, then you're vulnerable to let other people control you. And then the fourth step is just that it becomes natural. This is that's just normal. Normalization. It's just normal. This is just normal life. We'll just have to live with it like that. And I visited with it was actually a black man that was at my house the other day, and he had actually been trained. He'd been taught by Bill Ayers. I'm sure you know that name. Back in Michigan many years ago when he was in school, Bill was his teacher. And so he knew about the woke culture and all of that. And he said, Irene, I believe that we're just at step 3, but there's only one more step before America becomes a socialist country, and that needs to alarm all of us.
Well, we've been socialist, I think, for some time.
That is true. I say we don't have freedom of speech. That's for sure. I mean, that's been proven over and over again. So.
And very limited economically. Government, we have central planners controlling everything now, controlling markets, not all markets, controlling things they shouldn't be controlling. We really don't have capitalism. So, and it's a slow process, and they just gradually turn up the heat. And pretty soon, we're fried, and they own everything, and we're slaves.
And unfortunate, like a lot of these some of the students that I had, of course, they wanted their college loans. Just let the government pay me back. Pay me. I don't want to have to pay for those college loans, and that's another part.
How could people I can't even get my mind around how anybody that had a loan would think that's fair.
I don't think they're really concerned about whether it's fair or not.
But that tells me we have a real moral crisis.
Yes, we do.
And I get people may get a little irritated when I say it, but it's the truth. I said the problem is they tell kids from kindergarten on that it's okay to steal, right?
Yes.
And my opinion, not to make any Democrats upset, because I don't think most people are true Democrats, because I don't think most of them believe in their party's philosophy of theft. They use a fancy word called redistribution. Redistribution is another word for theft. That means I'm taking it
Take
from you
somebody and give it to
and
somebody
giving
else.
it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where I grew up, that's theft. Whether you're giving it to yourself or one of your fellow thieves, it's theft. And we have indoctrinated people to believe that that's okay. And that's problem number one. So we have to stop letting them define words and change the meaning of words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're smart.
Yes.
Now take words like equity.
Yes.
The way they're using equity is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as equity in people, in humans, unless you're selling their body parts or something like that.
Mm.
But equity, to me, is the difference in what you owe and the value of something. So people are not equal. Everybody is unique and everybody is different. And everybody has different talents and abilities. We're not the same. We are created with equal opportunity. But that's a whole different concept than how they're using it. But they're manipulating people's minds by using words inappropriately. Mm-hmm. Diversity, equity, inclusion.
Well, I found when I was studying all of this, I'd heard about it. We've been hearing about this stuff for quite a while, but I thought, well, I just really need to know more about it where I can talk about it and make some sense. But I found out that there was like 5 different things that were different. Like there's a new language, new philosophy, there was new crises, there was everything was. They just turn things around where people, if you don't really pay a lot of attention, well, you're bought into something you didn't even know much about.
Sounds
because
good.
It's in all of these acronyms. It's like, well, what is, people are like, when I say DEI, well, I've been studying it for a long time, and it's just words for me. But they're like, what does that mean? What about this and what about that? And it's just all very mysterious, kind of a mysterious deal. If you can just change everything up, then eventually people won't know what you're really talking about. And we've pretty well been hoodwinked, I would call it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way of putting it. And they've come up with a new word for it, haven't they? What is that? Did you hear about that?
On which one?
On the DEI.
I don't know.
They mentioned it last night at that candidate forum.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
I must have missed
it's
that.
one word. I forget what it was.
It's not woke, right?
No.
It all most of them hooked together about the same.
I can't remember what it was, but it's like a new word because once they figure out the people have
figured it out
to the other, then they'll switch the language.
Yes.
So they don't give up.
I guess we should be as creative as they are, right? Whoever they is.
The problem is they know that we're out running businesses and paying the taxes and making the world work for them. We're fixing their cars. We're mining their lithium for their electric cars. We're refining their copper. And they're stealing and supplying, living on government subsidies, taking everything we got.
Well.
So who's the smart ones here?
Yeah, right. That's why I think it's time for us to woke up.
Yeah, that's right.
Woke up to woke, I say.
And DEI should DIE.
Yeah. I've heard people turn those letters around.
Yeah.
I think it's accurate. Well, yeah. I worked with the FAFSA, the free money for college. And I try to get students to be appreciative. I'm like, hey, you've got all this free money and you just think that you just act like you deserve it. Well, you really don't deserve it, but you're getting it from the government, but you need to be thankful for it. At least be thankful and use it wisely. Well, that was another story, because lots of times I had one girl that she got some extra money, and she was off to Denver because she was going to watch those. She was going to the ball game, and they had a wingding of a weekend and blew all that. It was thousands of dollars. And she blew that whole thing, came back and was needing money again, and I'm like, this is not okay. And then I had another student at one time that came in, and he was getting ready to graduate. And so I was talking to him about what it was going to take to maybe transfer to WT or something, and I'd say, okay, now this free money that you're getting right now, it's not going to get greater, but your tuition is going to increase majorly. And so he looked at me real serious and he said, well, where's that money going to come from? And I said, I'm looking at the person that's going to come up with that money. It's not all free anymore. And so there is such an expectation that free is, I've got to have everything free. Well, I say free everything is not freedom, because you're going to get caught somewhere along the line.
Nothing is free. Everything has to be produced. Money has to be created by individuals who are productive. The reason we have inflation, I think people get it wrong. They think the government can just manipulate interest rates and solve this problem. No, the government created the problem. This is a symptom. This is not the problem. Mm-hmm. It's because people aren't producing anything is why you have inflation. And Volcker had nothing to do, in my opinion, with inflation coming down. It was Reagan reducing taxes and regulation, and the people were free to produce again, and inflation went to zero. And that's all you have to do. Produce more than you consume. Mm-hmm. But we're not, because the government's paying people not to work. They're giving all this free money to people who go to school. There's no production to soak up that money. And you have shortages, which is driving the prices up because we're not producing anything.
Well, during COVID, I have workforce background too, because I worked as a youth specialist for the Texas workforce for 8 years. And I have that background. And so when COVID came along and I started hearing these stories about how much money people were making, and I was appalled because unemployment didn't used to be that way. It didn't used to pay you more than you could make.
Yeah.
And so I know that it was helpful for some. It got them through the tragedy or whatever, but it also ruined a lot of small businesses because they couldn't get anybody that wanted to go to work. They were all, and true, I mean, if I got a bunch of money and I could make more sitting at home, well, maybe I would have done it too. But it really did mess up things, giving them exorbitant amounts of money and them just making people not want to work. And I think some of them, I don't know how they're making it now, but I think some of them never did go back to work.
Yeah, I don't really understand how all that works and how these people are getting by. I don't understand.
I don't know.
How are they manipulating the system in such a way that they don't have to work? I've told, they're getting their rent paid for. I think a lot of people probably just weren't making their house payments.
Probably so.
Well, and they got all that stuff stopped where they didn't have to do it. And then they're on food stamps. That apparently went through the roof. Pretty soon, you've got more. Once you get more than 50% of the population on government programs, it's going to be tough to bring it back. And
that's true. And we're really close.
Without absolute chaos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, at one time when I worked for the workforce, I worked with people that were under 21. They couldn't be 21. So I was a youth specialist. So I usually had between 18 and 21 students. But at one time I figured out Now, this was back some years ago. That was back in the early 2000s. One of my students, or one of my customers, we called them, she made more money than I did, and she didn't work. So it's
How
possible.
did she do that?
Well, she had medical free. She got a divorce for free. She got free childcare. She got free college. She got free food. She got free housing. It adds up. And now,
How do I get that?
how do you get that? You sign up. I actually went one time. This is kind of funny, I guess. I actually went over to the department, and I just sat down and I said, "Hey, I want to get what you've got." And they looked at me because they knew me, and they said, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I want to find out how to get all this free money. Tell me about it. I want to hear about it. I'm here. I'm your customer. I want to hear about it," because it's just crazy, especially when I was at the workforce. We threw money at people. We had to. You've got so much money, and that's one of the problems with the government right now is that, they give you so much money. Well, you got to use it, or you might not get it the next time. And if you're working for them, you do whatever they tell you to do. So sometimes I didn't think it was a good idea, but I was working for somebody that said, you got to get rid of this money. And, what we need to do, we need to be frugal. I say I'm a fiscal conservative, and I am. And I just think that we need to start watching how we're spending all this money. And if it doesn't have good results, then why are we still throwing money at them? Mm-hmm. And it's happening at the college right now. I read some articles about how, and I was involved with these emergency funds and stuff like that back when I was working at the college. But this one article that I read in the Atlantic, it told about this one couple and all the money that they had poured into this one couple. And I was like, golly, there's more than just two people out there that need this money. Why are you spending all the money on it wasn't all the money, but it was a lot of money on this one couple. And then at the end of the story, it said they didn't know where they were. They never completed college, which was just a 2-year college. And it was the end. That was the end of the story. And I thought, well, that wasn't very good. I wouldn't have even advertised that if it didn't have a better outcome than that. And I just think there's a lot of misuse of government funds. And I just kind of like to research stuff like that and find out, where is this money coming from and where's it going to? And sometimes it's kind of hard to find the information. But for myself, I'm having to watch how I spend my money. I'm retired now, and I'm having to watch. And I figure if I'm working for the government or whoever I'm working for, let's make this money work out. Let's get the most of what we can out of the money and not just throw it at a couple of people or not just waste it just for the heck of it. So that's the way I think.
Well, very good. Do you have a website or a way people can get a hold of you?
I do have a website, decision1.org/Irene-Hughes and a / It's kind of long, but I'll go over it again. decision1.org/Irene-Hughes /
Very good. Well, we'll put it below the video when we get it ready.
Okay.
So people will have the link. Well, I sure appreciate you coming by today. Enjoyed visiting with you, and look forward to seeing you around on the campaign trail and driving down the street and see you knocking on doors.
There you go. We're out there wherever we go, and I appreciate this opportunity to get to speak with you.
All right, Irene. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.